Yair Davidiy speaking to you from the land of Israel. I represent Brit-Am Hebrew Awareness. Our movement and the sense of lost and tribes are amongst Western peoples. And Western peoples, and including the inhabitants of the British Isles, who are dominated by the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh, as offshoots of Britain, such as the USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and other places, and the lost in tribes in those areas. You had the nation Israel. You had 12 tribes, actually 13 tribes, but a quorum of 12 is maintained by either not including Levi, the tribe of Levi and the tribes counted, or including Levi and counting the two tribes of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, as the one tribe of Joseph. And at all events, the 12 tribes of Israel were in the land of Israel. And then you had the King Saul, the King David, King Solomon. When Solomon died, the son of Rehoboam became king. In the reign of Rehoboam, 10 of the 12 tribes, 10 of the tribes seceded. They separated and they set up their own kingdom of Israel, and they were separate from the kingdom of Judah. They also worshipped golden cows, they worshipped the Baal, worshipped Asherah, and they went in the ways of the Canaanites around them, as is described in detail. In 2 Kings chapter 17, they became pagans in nearly every way. According to tradition, also as implied by biblical verses, they also ceased to keep the ceremony, the practice of circumcision. So that they were, in effect, non-Jewish, non-Israelite in nearly every way, but they remembered who they were to some degree. And they were conquered by the Syrians and taken away into captivity. In their places of captivity, they forgot their ancestry, they forgot who they were, assimilated to the ways of the peoples around them, but physically they remained together to a good degree. And they migrated, they moved to different areas. They split up into different groups, and some of them traveled by sea, through the Mediterranean to Spain, and from Spain up into the British Isles and the west coast of Europe. Others moved up to the north, through Turkey, through the Caucasus, into southern Russia and southeast Europe, and from there they moved eventually in stages. It took several centuries, the whole process. They eventually also moved to Western Europe. In Western Europe, they converged on the same areas. And as we said, they remained together physically, but they were divided into groups. We find different groups belonging to specific tribes. We can identify them. We see that even these different groups belonging to the same tribe, they converged in the same areas, as if divine providence was so directing them to come back together, which they did. We find a concentration of groups whom we may relate to specific Israelite tribes, Israelite clans. We find definite concentrations of groups from the same people, from the same tribes, and having the known tribal characteristics. Books on this where we describe the same in great detail, but we just go through it briefly to give you an idea of what there is, or what we have. The first tribe of Israel was Reuben. Reuben was the firstborn son of Israel. He was the son of Leah. The forefathers of the Israelite nations were Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob was renamed Israel. Israel had 12 sons. These became the 12 sons of Israel. And he had 4 wives, Leah, Rachel, Zilpah, and Bilhah. Leah was the first wife, and from Leah he begat Reuben. So Reuben, we find Reuben, the concentration of tribes from Reuben in the area of France. We had the Ribuari Franks, Ribuarian Franks, they called them in Latin, but they called themselves Ribuari or Rubi and Rubari, and this in Hebrew and Aramaic, this is a similar. This connotes the tribe of Reuben. And the Franks had originated in Scythia, also in the region of Turkey, and around the area of the Caspian Sea. That is where we can trace the groups that later gave rise to the Franks. And they came to the north. They came to the north. The earliest Franks that we know of first appeared about 250 BCE. Okay, quite relatively recently. Remember, in conventional terms, the Israelites and northern Israelites have been exiled about 700 BCE. The Ribuari Franks were also known as Ruby. Ruby is short for Reuben. Also, Ribuari can also has the same meaning as Reuben. Ruby also in English and connotes a precious stone. The Odom in Hebrew, the red ruby. And this ruby on the breastplate of the high priest was the stone, the precious stone of Reuben. And in France, the Ribuari Franks, they settled in Celtic areas where the previous inhabitants had a Celtic civilization. And the inhabitants in those regions were known as Gallaty, or in that area that was known as Davidiy, which is in effect is the same way as the French. In the French Bible, you will see the word Gilead written. Gilead was the area east of the Jordan in the land of Israel, where the tribes of Reuben had once dwelt alongside the tribes of Gad and Manasseh. Gilead is also the name of a section of the tribe of Manasseh, which was to be found both west and east of the Jordan. According to the Midrash, the symbol of Reuben was a mandrake. Mandrake is a type of flower. There's bulbs, there's white flowers, black bulbs, purple bulbs, and the folklore looks somewhat similar to the procreative organs of a male, and it's said to have aphrodisiac qualities. It's good for, it's also not only that, but it also is supposed to enhance fertility of women. And Leah, the first wife of Jacob, she had a kind of rivalry with her sister Rachel. Leah was began to give birth to different sons, and Rachel for a while remained barren until eventually she too begot Joseph, and after Joseph, Benjamin. But this is marked. Rachel also gave Bilhah, her handmaiden, to Joseph, that she should bear a son from him, and from Bilhah and Jacob was born Dan and Naphtali. Okay, in the meantime, we had Reuben, and Reuben was the firstborn son of Jacob, and the Bible tells us in Genesis 30:14, when Reuben was in the field, he found mandrakes. He brought the mandrakes to his mother. So these being what they are, they were valued by women folk in those times. And but Rachel wanted them. So Rachel said that. So Leah said, "Let our husband come unto me instead of to you this night, and you can have the mandrakes of my son." So Rachel agreed. So as we said, these mandrakes had, one could say, they're associated with romance, with romantic, romantic doings. And from Reuben came the French, rightly or wrongly, The French have a reputation for being romantically inclined. Also, Reuben was said to have acted inappropriately with Bilhah, his father's concubine, according to the simple meaning of the text. Others say that it's only figurative, it means something else, not exactly the way it sounds. But even so, we also understand the Bible in some cases not only as how it is traditionally explained, but also what is according to the simple meaning. So the French have had an international reputation for romantic proclivities. And this mandrake was described as having a purple or white flower, somewhat similar to the white lily, the fleur de lis, which is a traditional symbol of the French monarchy and of French nationalism. And incidentally, we also find on coins from Judah in about 130 BCE the image of the lily. And at all events, the first Frankish kings and Merovingians had a sun cult. The French king Louis XIV, who was in some ways the greatest king who ever lived, he was the last of the great kings, one could say. He gave birth, he gave rise to French nationalism in its modern sense. He in effect curated France as a modern nation. You had Louis XIV, who was the Sun King, an absolute monarch, who in effect demoted the nobility and created a centralized system. After Louis XIV, there came Louis XV, and then there came Napoleon. And actually, there came the French Revolution together with Napoleon. And the French Revolution overturned everything and reduced everything to a common popular level. And Napoleon came along and took elements both from the Revolution and from the past, from the monarchy, and he combined them. We should also note that France, not France, but rather not only France, not only was France associated with the Sun King and so on, and Reuben, and also the cock crows. You have the cock crows as the cock crows usually at sunrise, or in folklore, the crow of the cock of the rooster is associated with the sunrise. We even have a blessing in the Jewish prayer. One of the first blessings in the morning is the blessing of the crowing of the cock of the rooster at the sunrise, associated with the sunrise. And the Galli, the inhabitants of France in the time of the Romans were known as Galli, and this in Latin also connotes a rooster. So they gave the rooster. So in Roman thought, the Gauls, inhabitants of France, were associated with the rooster. And therefore you often see in folklore and also in cartoons and so on, France depicted as a rooster. And the rooster, as we said, is linked to the sunrise. And you have an association, and this comes back to Jewish folklore, Jewish tradition, that in many synagogues, usually in Jewish synagogues, you don't see images. You do and you don't. Many Jewish synagogues are against images whatsoever, but they have geometric carvings and so on. And in some cases, not in some cases, a lot of cases, there's an exception is made for the symbols of the tribes. They have symbols of the tribes in many synagogues. Where I live, there's a lot of synagogues. Every street has several synagogues. And the only decoration that you will ever see in these synagogues is the symbols of the tribes. I would say that about one synagogue in 5 has these decorations of the tribes. And for some reason, Reuben is associated with the rising of the sun, which brings us back to French tradition, also being associated with the rising of the sun and being called the rooster, cock, and the Sun King, and so on. Reuben had 4 sons, Hanok, Phalu, Hezron, and Carmi. And these gave their names to areas and peoples in West Germany, France, and Belgium, where the Franks were to be found, and also in the Netherlands. And those in Germany seem to have later moved to France. That is a point, and a point of interest is that the sons of Reuben is destined, according to the Zohar, to wage war in the land of Israel against Jerusalem, or for Jerusalem. It depends upon which version you use. And the Crusaders of Europe in the 1069 to 1270, the Crusaders who came to the Holy Land and attempted to conquer it, the French were prominent amongst them. In most cases, they were led by the French. They also had English Crusaders, you had people from parts of Germany, from Normandy and so on, but on the whole, the French were prominent in these crusades. And this could fit in with what the Zohar says. Perhaps it was a forerunner of what will happen in future times. Napoleon Bonaparte, the French emperor in 1799, he offered to restore Palestine to the Jews. He did this at the siege of Accra, and apparently he was besieging Accra. Accra is known as Akko today, on the coast near Haifa. It's a strategic area, and there's a fortress there that he wanted to take. And the person commanding the appointee of the local Mamluks commanding this fortress was a Jew. So perhaps Napoleon wanted to persuade him to come over to his side, but he didn't. But at all events, Napoleon did make the offer to restore Palestine to the Jews, which is of interest. We know that French Gentile volunteers fought on the Jewish side in Israel's War of Independence, 1948 to 1949. We also know that in 1920 to 1928, for a short period, the French ruled over Syria. And Syria is in effect within the territorial area that once belonged to the tribe of Reuben. Tribe of Reuben had its land, had its territory east of the Jordan, together with the tribe of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh. And the French have also traditionally been involved with Lebanon. Some of the Christians in Lebanon may even descend from French crusaders. That they have their traditions and to that effect, and they even look that way. Blonde to blue-eyed in some cases, and so on. And France has been friendly to the state of Israel more often than not, but has also been has had anti-Semitic and anti-Israelite elements amongst it, and it has had one could say interventionist tendencies. That anti-Semitic left-wing or moderate Frenchmen in the EU have been in favour of the EU taking an active role in French policy in the Middle East, especially in Palestine, and against the state of Israel. So that too needs to be recognised. Now we have the name Reuben, literally in Hebrew, means see-a-son. It also has a connotation of rubui, of increase, of multitudes. Sons of Reuben were Hanok, Phalu, Hezron, and Carmi. The meaning of these names is also of interest. Hanok means inauguration or education. Phalu means distinction. Hezron connotes dweller of the courtyard, and Carmi can mean vineyard, from the word kerem. And these show attributes of the French. The French are big on education. They're big on. They are known for their high level of education, stressing the value of scholarship. and also of ceremony, also distinction. The French try and do things well. Whatever the French do, they often try and do it well. They are known for this. You have French perfume, you have French fashion, you have an emphasis on quality. And that is what the word kalu in Hebrew can connote. Distinction. Also, Hezon denotes dweller of the courtyard, peasant type person, or an aristocrat. It can connote both of them. And the French have been known for both of that, for both of those features in their society. And as we said, Kami means Kerem, my vineyard, and the French are known for their vineyards. French wines are considered the best in the world, and the production of wine, good wines, is an important aspect of the French economy. Now we have a point of interest. The book of Obadiah 120, the book of Obadiah 120, it's in the Bible. There's the last verse in the book of Obadiah. Obadiah in Hebrew is pronounced as Obadiah. And it says the captivity, and I'm translating from the English. The English says, and the captivity of this host of the children of Israel shall possess that of the Canaanites, even unto Tserefath, and the captivity of Jerusalem, which is in Sepharad, shall possess the cities to the south. Now, in the Hebrew, this verse may also be translated as saying, this first exile, Geruta Haelazeh, captivity of his host, this first exile of the children of Israel. The first exile, according to the commentators, means the exile of the 10 tribes. The 10 tribes were exiled out of all the Israelite tribes. First, the 10 tribes were taken away. That was the first exile of the Israelites. The Assyrians took the 10 tribes away. And then about 120 years later, the Babylonians also took Judah into exile. And then there were other exiles. But the first exile was that of the 10 tribes. So this first exile of the 10 tribes shall possess that of the Canaanites, or up until the Canaanites. The Canaanites are said to mean Germany. And also we have evidence we find in Ptolemy, in the maps of geography of Ptolemy. Ptolemy wrote about 100 CE, but he was using sources for 300 or 400, 500 years earlier, and he also gives names, Canaanite names to places in West Germany. And there's a scholar in Germany, Veneman, who has found evidence of Phoenicians, that is Canaanite settlers in West Germany, both from the area of Sidon in Lebanon, and also from Carthage in North Africa, which are also referred to as Canaanites. Also see, Ibn Ezra identifies Germany with the Canaanites. And it says this first exile of the tribes of Israel from France, from Tserefath. According to Rashi, that means Tserefath is a word name given to France. It means France. This is the land being called France. That's what Rashi says. And Rashi says that the last 10 tribes came there. They came to France. Rashi is a very, very important commentator in Jewish tradition. So if he says something, it doesn't mean you have to accept it, but it should be treated with respect. If you can quote Rashi on something, it means you have a source worth relating to. It cannot be dismissed. So Rashi says the last 10 tribes went to France, the land called France. And other sources also say the same thing. Nahmanides, that is, Ramban says the 10 tribes were in the far north, or the ends of the far north. And they represent, and they are the tribes of Joseph and other tribes. And other commentators say things along those lines. Abba now says that Tserefath not only was France intended, but also Britain was intended. That is, Isle of Britain angled to. So that is of interest. We also have this. So this word Tserefath in Hebrew is considered, it means France. In modern Hebrew, Tserefath is a name given to France. So we took this word Tserefath, we placed it in the Bible codes, and it came out in Numbers 26:4, where the verse speaks of Reuben and the clans of Reuben, especially those of Hanok and Phalu. So this is quite interesting. It's a 1 in a million chance, and it is proof. It's an indication. So that is what we have concerning Reuben. We have more, but that is what for this talk. That is what we'll. That is why. What some of the reasons why we identify Reuben with France. The French had the characteristics of Reuben. And Reuben was the firstborn. It says the blessing of Jacob to Reuben says that you are my firstborn. You will be the first of my glory, but you will not prevail. So in French history, were in the early European history, the French led the European nations. They were the beginning of the power building of countries, of empires and so on. In Europe, they were gradually eclipsed by Britain when the time came. But even now, France is important. France has always been important, and it still is important. The French were also very important in the First World War. A great many of Jews, the French, were. This is an interesting point about the French. The French were more anti-Semitic than other countries in Europe. And they also, in the Second World War, they didn't fight as well as they had in the First World War for reasons of their own. And they also had, Vichy had a section of their population collaborating with the French. But even so, about 80% of the Jews in France were saved. Which is the highest, probably the highest country in occupied Europe. So that is worth noting. Rabbinical commentary, Clear Carl, Rabbi Shlomo Gunschitz, 1550-1619, who's a Rebbe of Prague. He says, concerning Reuben, he makes remarks that are similar to those that are also pertinent to the French. A heroic warrior imparting strength and power to the people. To achieve his victories, Reuben will require overwhelming numbers or large numbers of people and great martial qualities. This will be given unto him, but not to a sufficient degree to acquire preeminence over his brothers. The blessing of peace will also be given to him, an equal standing with his brothers, but not more than that. Another point is that the official emblem of France is its tricolour, blue, white, red flag. Previously the symbol of France was the fleur-de-lis, which had been a royal emblem since the Dark Ages. The present emblem, the blue, white, red flag, also has the motto, liberty, equality, fraternity. And these qualities are exemplified in the figure of Reuben. The tribe of Reuben dominates the Israelite element in France. Liberty, Reuben acted with liberty. He acted with lack of propriety towards the concubine of his father, see Genesis 37:22. This was taking liberty too far. At another point, Reuben attempted to set Joseph free when Joseph was taken by his brothers who were jealous of him. Joseph was taken by his brothers and thrown into a pit and left to die, and Reuben intended to save him. See Genesis 37:22. It did not succeed, but yet the intention was there. This is an application of the principles of both liberty and fraternity. At the same time, the commentaries say that Reuben was the firstborn, and Reuben should have acted with more authority. That is, the principle of equality was misapplied. He should have asserted himself more, and therefore the principle of equality was misapplied. Another point involves the relative positioning of Francis compared to that of Reuben. Now, the Israelite tribes when they came out of Egypt were encamped in the wilderness. They were in a camp around the tabernacle. The tabernacle in the middle, the different tribes around it in four groups of three. Beginning from Judah, Judah was the leading tribe. Judah was together with the tribes of Issachar and Zebulun in the east. Reuben with Simeon and Gad were in the south. Ephraim with Manasseh and Benjamin were in the west. Dan with Asher and Naphtali were in the north. After conquering the land of Canaan and dividing it among the Israelite tribes, the relative position of each tribe in regard to the other tribes was similar to that which had been in the wilderness. So too, after the tribes were exiled by the Assyrians, and they migrated, they moved around, they moved to different areas, but they eventually converged in Western Europe. They came to Western Europe and they resettled according to their tribes, or different portions of the one tribe would, as if guided by divine providence, come together in the same places. And settling there, we find that the relative positions of these tribal countries to each other, after identifying each group, we find that the relative positions of these tribes in relation to each other is similar to that which they had in the wilderness and that which they had in the land of Israel. Reuben in the wilderness was in the south. France is in the south compared to other tribes. Reuben was also in the south. Reuben in the wilderness was in the south, and we find groups from Simeon in Brit-Am province of France to the west on the coast opposite England. And Reuben was with Gad in the south. On the whole, Gad is to be identified with Sweden and the Goths. On the whole, Gad is to be identified with Sweden and the Goths. The Goths were in both Sweden and southern France, which otherwise pertains to Reuben. So we find Reuben and Simeon and Gad together in France. And this relationship is somewhat similar to what they also had when they were in the land of Israel. We find Reuben and Gad neighbouring with each other to the east of the Jordan. They were together. And to the south, Reuben, if you look at the map, Reuben to the south is opposite Judah, but bordering an area that was later occupied by Simeon. So there to be found Simeon, Reuben and Gad in the same alignment. Another point of interest involves the Huguenots. The Huguenots were Protestants in France, eventually many of whom were eventually driven out, but they're historically important. And they were descended from Hagi, a Gothic group from Gad. And these Huguenots were Hebraic in character. They were usually pro-Jewish, and historically they're very important. Descendants of the Huguenots are to be found in South Africa, the USA and elsewhere. Also Huguenot villages of France, those who were not driven out or remained in France, whole villages still belong to them. Huguenots in the south of France, they saved many Jewish lives. They, with great self-sacrifice and great courage, as whole communities of them helped save thousands of Jewish lives. So that too is to be noted. So these identifications of different groups with Israelite tribes is correct, on the whole, and must be correct. Here and there minor modifications may have to be made, but on the whole we can be fairly certain that we are in the right direction. The Almighty is guiding us, and that our identifications are correct ones. Thank you, may the Lord God of Israel bless you.